Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Very warm welcome for this Monday, 15th August 2022 morning Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam discussion. Today we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, entitled The Lord in the Heart, text 23. Before we discuss on this verse, let's sing Jai Radha Madhav. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda Shri Radhe. Jai Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda Shri Radhe. Jai Nittai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Nittai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Jai Nittai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Nittai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajakacarya Stotra Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। मथुरा धाम की जय। मायापुर धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। तुलसी देवी की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। सामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय। All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanastu Krishne Matirastu. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, entitled The Lord in the Heart, Text 23. Yogeśvarāṇāṁ gatim āhur antar, bahis-tri-lokyāḥ pavanāntar-ātmanām, na karmabhis gatim āpnuvanti, vidyā-tapo-yoga-samādhi-bhājām. yogeśvarāṇāṁ gatir-āhur antar, bahis-tri-lokyāḥ pavanāntar-ātmanām, na karmabhis gatim āpnuvanti, vidyā-tapo-yoga-samādhi-bhājām. yogeśvarāṇāṁ gatim āhur antar, bahis-tri-lokyāḥ pavanāntar-ātmanām, na karmabhis gatim āpnuvanti, vidyā-tapo-yoga-samādhi-bhājām. Word by word, yogeśvarāṇāṁ, of the great saints and devotees. Gatim, destination. Āhur, it is said. Antah, within. Bahi, without. Tri-lokyāḥ, of the three planetary systems. Pavanāntar, within the air. ātmanām, of the subtle body. Na, never. Karmabhis, by fruitive activities. Tam, that. Gatim, speed. āpnuvanti, achieve. Vidyā, devotional service. Tapa, austerities. Yoga, mystic power. Samādhi, knowledge. Bhājām, of those who entertain. Translation. The transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body. As such, by the strength of their devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted, within and beyond the material worlds. The fruitive workers or the gross materialists can never move in such an unrestricted manner. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. The materialistic scientists' endeavor to reach other planets by mechanical vehicles is only a futile attempt. One can, however, reach the heavenly planets by virtuous activities, but one can never expect to go beyond Swarga or Janaloka by such mechanical or materialistic activities, either gross or subtle. The transcendentalists, who have nothing to do with the gross material body, can move anywhere within or beyond the material worlds. Within the material worlds, they move in the planetary systems of the Mahar, Janas, Tapas, and Satyaloka. And beyond the material worlds, they can move in the Vaikunthas as unrestricted spacemen. Narada Muni is one of the examples of such spacemen, and Durvasa Muni is one of such mystics. By the strength of devotional service, austerities, mystic powers, and transcendental knowledge, everyone can move like Narada Muni or Durvasa Muni. It is said that Durvasa Muni traveled throughout the entirety of material space and part of spiritual space within 1 year only. The speed of the transcendentalists can never be attained by the gross or subtle materialists. Before we discuss on this verse, let us offer some prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Namashrestham Manumapi Shachiputram Matra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Murupurim Mathurim Goshthavati Radha Kundam Girivaram Maho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Adadandastranam dante idam yachah punaha punaha Shriman Rupa Padambhojam Dhulisyam Janma Janmani. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 23. Yogeśvarāṇāṁ gatim āhur antar bahis-tri-lokyāḥ pavanāntar-ātmanām na karmabhis gatim āpnuvanti vidyā-tapo-yoga-samādhi-bhājām. The transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body. As such, by the strength of their devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted within and beyond the material worlds. The fruitive workers or the gross materialists can never move in such an unrestricted manner. We see in this verse, Srila Shukadeva Goswami is mentioning to Parikshit Maharaj about the qualities of the person who has surrendered on to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yogeśvarāṇāṁ, yogeśvarāṇāṁ, of the great saints and devotees. That is how Srila Prabhupada translates the first word in this verse. Yogeśvarāṇāṁ, of the great saints and devotees. Gatim, destination, āhur, it is said, antar bahis-tri-lokyāḥ pavanāntar-ātmanām. So, this is mentioning how the person who is totally absorbed in remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shrimanti Gayanti Grananti Sadhava. So, a real spiritual person hears, sings, and remembers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishloka abaddhavati api namani anantasya yashu ankitani yat Shrinvanti gayanti grinanti sadhu. So this is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam about how a person who is absorbed in rendering loving devotional service to Krishna will always hear and chant about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his wonderful devotees. Even though the literature might have some discrepancies in terms of grammatical errors or things like that. Tadvag visarga janataga viplava. So what is the spiritual scriptures like Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, what is it doing in this material world? It is janataga viplava. It is removing all the sins and it is creating a revolution within the society. Janataga viplava. Yasmin prati shlokam abhaddavati api. And there might be some grammatical errors or some kind of imperfection in the material sense within these scriptures, even though it is only perceived in the material sense. It cannot be perceived in the spiritual sense, because in spiritual sense everything is full. Purnamadha purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnam evavashishyate om purnamadha. So in the spiritual realm everything is complete, everything is perfect, and from the perfect, from the whole, another whole is coming. So purnamadaha purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate. From the whole, the complete wholes are emanating. That is WHOLE, not HOLE. So we can. So it's not a void. It is a complete WHOLE, whole. So this is the wonderful transcendental realm where everything is natad bhasate suryo na shashanko na pavaka yad gatva na nivartante tad dhamam paramam mama. So as Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, he mentions about what is the spiritual realm. So spiritual realm is where there is no need of natad bhasate suryo. There is no need of sun, na shashanko. There is no need of moon, na pavaka. There is no need of fire or electricity. Yad gatva na nivartante tad dhamam paramam mama. And from where, when one goes back home, back to Godhead, one does not come back. That is my transcendental abode. That is what Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita. So this is the situation of these transcendentalists, the pure spiritualists who are constantly absorbed in loving devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the, as it is mentioned, ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paripasate. So this Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that one who is constantly remembering me, chintayanto mam, ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paripasate. So they are remembering and rendering loving devotional service to Krishna. Tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogaśvarāṇāṁ vahamyam. So Krishna mentions that I provide them what they lack. So this is the transcendental potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there is neha bhikrama nashosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So actually Arjuna asked this question to Krishna, that what happens to a transcendentalist who has totally given up everything and is following the spiritual direction of Krishna consciousness, and somehow or the other that person is not able to complete the journey of Krishna consciousness, going back home, back to Godhead. So is such a person doomed, in the sense that that person has, because he has left everything material and gone totally in the spiritual direction, somehow he has not progressed materially, and then even in the spiritual sense, because he has not completed his journey going back home, back to Godhead, he is not even so unfortunately the spiritual journey is also not completed. So Arjuna asks this question to Krishna, that what happens to such a person, and Krishna mentions that there is no loss or diminution in this endeavor. Na iha abhikrama nasha asti. Na iha abhikrama nasha asti. No, not even an iota of loss or diminution in this endeavor. Why? Because swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. So if one is rendering even a little bit of loving devotional service to Krishna, swalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. That little loving devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead saves one from the greatest dangers, the greatest fear. So what is the greatest fear? The greatest fear in this material world is the fear of death. So in the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, what is mentioned is avidya. There are pancha kleshas mentioned, the 5 different kinds of challenges or impurities that are present within the conditional state of existence. And the last one is called abhinivesha. So that is the fear of death. The first one is avidya, ignorance. So when there is ignorance, there is fear of death. Avidya, asmita. From ignorance arises false ego. Asmita is false ego. From false ego arises raga and dvesha. What is raga, dvesha? Raga is attachment and dvesha is ichha dvesha samuthena dvandva mohena bharata sarge yanti parantapa. So this is Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita. This is the ichha dvesha samuthena. Raga and dvesha is attachment and repulsion. So because we identify ourselves with the external body is based on the software of the mind intelligence and false ego. And that software is progressing from one life to another. So whatever impressions have been stored in the countless previous lifetimes, those impressions are coming back in this life. And basing on those impressions, there is attachment and repulsion to things. So we get attracted to the things that has been impressed over us since time immemorial, and we get repelled by things again in the same way. So this is raga and dvesha. So there is avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. Abhinivesha is the last one, the pancha kleshas, the 5 different kinds of impurities. So that is the so now Vasudeva Bhaktanam in the Phalastuti of Vishnu Sahasranama, the 1,000 names of Vishnu, it is mentioned that na Vasudeva Bhaktanam ashubham vidyate kochit janma mrityu jara vyadhi bhayam naivopajayate. So it is a very beautiful Phalastuti in Sri Vishnu Sahasranama, the 1,000 names of Vishnu. And what it is mentioning there is na Vasudeva Bhaktanam. So in when one is rendering loving devotional service to Krishna, there is no ashubham. Nothing inauspicious happens to a person who is rendering loving devotional service to Krishna. Vidyate kochit. At no point of time, nothing inauspicious happens to a person who is rendering loving devotional service to Krishna. Na Vasudeva Bhaktanam ashubham vidyate kochit. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukkham naivopajayati. And in this material world, there is janma mrityu jara vyadhi. There is birth, death, old age, and disease. So this is a person can be the greatest materialist, but these 4 miseries in the material world cannot be overcome by any kind of material endeavor. The only way one can come out of birth, death, old age, and disease is when one is Vasudeva Bhakta. So when one is rendering loving devotional service to Vasudeva, the son of Vasudeva, Sri Krishna. So this is the transcendental potency. So in this verse, it is mentioned about by the strength of their devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted within and beyond the material worlds. So this is the transcendental position of the person who has surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. that they are not restricted in any way. In the conditioned state, there is brahmatam upariyada. In the conditioned state also, there is this movement of the living entity from the ऊर्ध्वं गच्छन्ति सत्वस्थ मध्ये तिष्ठन्ति रजस जगन्य गुणवृत्तिस्थ अधो गच्छन्ति तामसा. So in the conditioned state of existence also, there is this movement from upper planetary system to middle planetary system to lower planetary system, but that movement is based on the conditioned state of existence. It is not based on an independent movement. It is dependent on the activities that the conditioned living entity is doing. So when the activities are pious, the conditioned living entities are going to the higher planetary systems. And tetvam bhunktva swargaloka vishalam punye martilokam vishanti. As Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, that when someone is doing pious deeds, by the dint of those pious deeds, one might get to heavenly planets and enjoy the so-called unlimited happiness in the heavenly planets. But then once those pious credits expire, when again punya martilokam vishanti, again one comes into the this middle planetary system where there is janma mrityu jara vyadhi, and even this is the position in the conditioned state of existence. But what is the position in the liberated state of existence? In the liberated state, one is, this is what is mentioned here. These transcendental, like it is mentioned about Narada Muni. Dhyayatas charanambujam bhava nirjita chetasa outkantyashru kalakshasya hridime asin shanai hari. So that is mentioned about Narada Muni when he was the son of a maidservant. Before he became Narada Muni, he was the son of a maidservant, and we can understand here that. So this is the transcendental potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That it is mentioned that the people who are totally absorbed in the loving devotional service of Krishna, at some point or another, they will go back home, back to Godhead. And Narada Muni is a perfect example of that. So he mentions, when Narada Muni loses, he had only his mother, and his mother gets a snake bite and she dies. And at that time, yasyaham anugrahanami harishyeta dhanam shanai tato dhanam harishyasya swajanam dukha dukhitam. So it is mentioned by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, in Bhagavatam, that when Krishna shows special mercy to someone, yasyaham anugrahanami harishyeta dhanam shanai. So Krishna takes away all the material possessions from that person. What is the reason? When such material possessions are taken away, sometimes even the relatives whose love is based on that person possessing the material possessions, they also will leave that person. So that person is totally bereft of all the material attachments. That surrender onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes very pure. And Krishna creates that wonderful situation for the devotee. Where the devotee is totally surrendering onto the Lord without having to think about anything else. That is a transcendental position. We see here in this verse about all those transcendental devotees. And tasyaiva hetu prayateta kovida na labhyate yad brahmatam upariyada tal labhyate dukkavad anyata sukham kalena sarvatra gabhira ramasa. So it is mentioned that such transcendentalists who are totally surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what are they doing? They are always remembering, they are always hearing about Krishna, they are always chanting about Krishna. So tasyaiva hetu prayateta kovida. So they are the real wise people, they are the real intelligent people, kovida. And they engage in tasyaiva hetu, prayateta. Always their endeavor is in remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Na labhyate yad brahmatam upariyada. So when one does not attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one is moving up and down in the planetary systems. So as we mentioned before, so there is the transcendentalists mentioned here in this particular verse. They have got the unrestricted movement within the whole planetary system, including the spiritual world. But then the conditioned living entities are also moving up and down, but they are not never going to the spiritual realm. They are moving up and down in the material realm. So tasyeva hetu prayateta na labhyate yad brahmatam upariyada. So when one is not totally surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one is brahmatam upariyada, roaming in the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems. Tallabhyate dukkavad anyatah sukham kalena sarvatra gabhira ramasa. So it is mentioned in the next two lines of that verse that just like one does not look for sorrow, but sorrow still comes in our lives. Similarly, the happiness that is destined for each and every individual will automatically come in their lives. Just like the sorrow comes automatically, the happiness that is destined will also come automatically. So therefore, the person who is fully wise and fully intelligent just engages in the loving devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tasyaiva hetu prayatita kovila. So this is the transcendental position. There is this kamasya nendriya priti labho jivita yavata jivasya tattva jignasa nartho yascha iha karmabhis. So this is mentioned. This verse is mentioned about those transcendental spiritualists who are totally surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said that they are not interested in the fruitive activities. Kamasya na indriya priti. So they do not have attachment to sense gratification, and they are not interested in fruitive activities. So the fruitive activities and sense gratification are very closely related to each other because the fruitive activities are performed for the purpose of gratifying the senses. So what do we mean by fruitive activity? Fruitive activity means that one is performing the activities in order to get pious credits. So the motive behind performing the activities is that one wants to get all the best satisfaction in this body, and then when this body is given up, one wants to go to the heavenly planets and enjoy even more in the heavenly planets. So this is the fruitive activities. So when one is engaged in that kamasya, na indriya priti, so the transcendentalist, the person who is purely spiritual, who has surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are not interested in indriya priti, in sense gratification. Kamasya na indriya priti, labho jiveta yavata. So what do they do then? Whatever is coming by the means of providence, in terms of helping them to maintain their body, they just take that. They are not endeavoring separately to maintain the body. The only endeavor that they are doing is rendering loving devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Nothing else they are doing. And they know 100% that by doing that, everything else is automatically done. Shraddha shabde vishwas karile sudrida nischay Krishne bhakti kaile sarva karma krita hai. So this is mentioned in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita about how the faith of the person who is totally surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so strong that they understand that just by rendering loving devotion service to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the other works are automatically performed. So this is the transcendental position of those pure devotees of Krishna, like Srila Narada Muni. So Narada Muni is a traveling spaceman who always says Narayana, Narayana. So he is totally absorbed in in singing the glories of Narayana. Narayana parasarve na kutaschana vibhyati. Swarga apavarga narkeshu api tulyartha darshina. So this is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, that when one is totally surrendered onto Narayana, Narayana parasarve, one is not afraid of anything else. Na kutaschana vibhyati. And then in such a state, one might remain in the heavenly planet, Swarga, one might remain in the Apavarga, in the middle planetary system. One might remain in the Naraka, in the lower planetary systems. Api tulyartha darshina. One is always absorbed in the loving devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when one is absorbed in that state of mind, whatever the external situation is, it does not matter. So we see in the story of Bali Maharaj that he was a grandson of Prahlad Maharaj, and his roots were coming from like Prahlad Maharaj was son of Hiranyakashipu. So his roots are in the Asura, in the demoniac dynasty. But because he was a grandson of Prahlad Maharaj, he had that total absorption in loving devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when Krishna came in as Vamana, and when Shukracharya, his guru of Bali Maharaj, said to Bali Maharaj that this Vamana is none other than Vishnu himself, who is disguised as dwarf Brahmana, and he is going to take away all your possessions. Even then, Bali Maharaj says that no, I want, if that is Vishnu, then I want to give everything to Vishnu. So that is his pure devotional service, and that is Atma-nivedanam. So it is mentioned there are 9 kinds of devotional engagements, services that can be engaged in, starting with Shravanam, hearing about the Lord, then talking about the Lord, Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam, remembering the Lord, Pada Sevanam, rendering service to the lotus feet of the Lord, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, that is giving the flowers to the Lord, that is saying the prayers to the Lord, becoming the servant of the Lord, becoming the friend of the Lord, Sakhyam, and then Atma Nivedanam, total surrender down to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see in that story of Bali Maharaj that he was warned by his guru Shukracharya that don't give anything to this Vamana, dwarf Brahmana. But he did not. He wanted. That was his level of surrender. That he wanted to surrender himself to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna, being present in the heart of all the living entities, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sannivishta Mattah Smritir Jnanam Apohanam Cha. So the Paramatma present in the heart of Bali Maharaj gave the permission to Bali Maharaj that yes, you want to surrender unto me, please surrender unto me. And Bali Maharaj then washed the feet of Brahmana, and then Vamana asked him three steps of land, and Vamana became huge, and with one step the whole planetary system, upper and middle, the third step, one more planetary system, and then the whole universe was covered. And then Vamana asked, where should I place my third leg? And Bali Maharaj said, please place it on my head. And in this way, Bali Maharaj actually went into the Patala Loka, in the lower planetary system. But even remaining there, Vamana Dev actually said that I will be your doorkeeper. So this is a transcendental position of pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of God. That Krishna never leaves the pure devotee. Sadhavo hridayam mahyam sadhunam hridayam tvaham madanya tena janati naham tebhyo managami. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that and this episode actually is in so Durvasa Muni is also mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in this purport, and we know the story of Durvasa Muni where the story between Durvasa Muni and Ambarish Maharaj. So Ambarish Maharaj, it is mentioned how his wonderful love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. So, Savai Manaha Krishna Padaravindyo, Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanu Varnane, Karo Hare Mandira Marjanadishu, Shrutim Chakara Chuta Satkathodaya. So, his mind was always absorbed in Krishna. Savai Mana, in the lotus feet of Krishna. Krishna Padaravindyo, and his words were always describing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanu Varnane. Karau Harer Mandira Marjanadishu. His hands were always engaged in cleaning the temple of the Lord. Shrutim Chakara Chuta Satkatodaya. His ears were always engaged in hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, how Ambarish Maharaj, who was totally a pure devotee of Krishna, he did the Ekadashi Vrata, and in the Dwadashi day, at a particular time, he has to break the fast of Ekadashi. And during that time, Durvasa Muni and his thousands of disciples come. And consulting the Brahmanas, Ambarish Maharaj says that Ambarish Maharaj is guided that he can take water and break the fast. So he does that, and because Durvasa Muni and his thousands of disciples have gone for bath, when they come back, they are a little bit late. And when Durvasa Muni sees that he has broken the fast, he gets angry, and he creates a demon from his hair, and then he says that this demon should kill Ambarish Maharaj. But then Ambarish Maharaj is totally absorbed in the loving devotion service of Krishna, and now Krishna is this is the Kshipram Bhavati Dharmatma Shashvachantim Nigachyati Kaunteya Pratijanihi Name Bhakta Pranashyati. So Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita that, O Arjuna, you declare it on my behalf that my devotee shall never perish. So Krishna himself, sometimes he might break his promise. But when a devotee declares on behalf of Krishna, promises on behalf of Krishna, he will never break that promise. So the example given, Srila Prabhupada gives this example in many of his lectures, is that of in the Mahabharata war, where Bhishma Dev actually says that today is the day when I will fight to my fullest and I will defeat the Pandavas. So with that total conviction, Bhishma Dev goes in the battlefield that day, and then Krishna actually has to lift a chariot wheel in front of Bhishma Dev. So Krishna actually promised that he will not lift a weapon, but indirectly he lifted the chariot wheel and he broke his own promise. So this is, Srila Prabhupada mentions this in many of his lectures, that sometimes the Supreme Personality of Godhead can break his promise for the protection of his pure devotees. But when the pure devotee declares on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, promises on behalf of Supreme Personality of Godhead, then there is no question of breaking that promise. So this is the Kaunteya Pratijanihi Name Bhakta Pranashyati. So Krishna mentions to Arjuna that, O Arjuna, O son of Kunti, you declare it on my behalf that my devotee shall never perish. So this was executed in the sense of Ambarish Maharaj, where the Sudarshana Chakra from the Supreme Personality of Godhead started the wheel, the disc wheel, that started going behind. It not only killed the demon that Durvasa Muni created, but it started going behind Durvasa Muni. And Durvasa Muni ran everywhere, including going back to Krishna, Vishnu himself. And then Krishna said that he asvatantra iva dvija sadhubhe grasta deva bhakter aham bhakta paradhino. So what Krishna said to Durvasa Muni was, I am actually under the control of my devotees. This is a transcendental position. Vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhakta Govinda Madipurusham tamaham bhajami. So this is Panthastu koti shatavatsara sampragamyo vayu rathapi manaso muni pongavana sopi asti yat prapadi simni avichintya tatve Govinda Madipurusham tamaham bhajami. So this is the transcendental position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it is mentioned, Panthastu koti shatavatsara sampragamyo vayorathapi manaso munipungavana. So this is said about the materialists who have mystic powers. So they can try and travel at the speed of light. Panthastu koti shatavatsara sampragamyo, speed vayorathapi manaso munipungavana. And the speed of the mind is said to be even faster. The fastest speed in the material realm is the speed of the mind. Why is it the fastest speed? Because the moment we remember something, we actually are present at that place. So that's why the significance of mind is extremely important, because a person could be at a place physically, but if the mind is not present there, then the person is not present there, even though the person might be present physically. So that is Vayurathapi manaso munipungavana. Sopi asti yat prapada simni avichintya tatve. Govinda Madipurusham tamaham bhajami. So this is the transcendental position of the avichintya tattva. It is said that the achintya khalu ye bhava datam charkena yujayet. Prakridirbhi param yatat tad achintyasya lakshanam. So this is everything related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is achintya. It cannot be understood by the material mind, blunt material senses. Atah Shri Krishna namadi na bhavet grahyam indriye. Sevon mukhe jivhado swayam eva swarati. So when everything related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, cannot be known through the blunt material senses. Na bhavet grahyam indriye. Then how can one know the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Seva unmukha. When one renders loving devotional service with full surrender, with full enthusiasm, utsahat nishya dhairya tat karma pravartanat. So this is mentioned in the Upadeshamrita, the nectar of instruction by Srila Rupa Goswami. So what are the qualities that are needed for rendering loving devotional service? It starts with enthusiasm, then determination, nishya, dhairya, patience, tat karma pravartanat. One has to do the activities that are conducive for developing the love for the Lord. Then satovritte and sadhu sangha satovritte. Shadbhir bhaktir prasiddhyati. So the 6 ways through which the devotional service can be increased. So that is. So we were talking about Ambarish Maharaj and how so Krishna mentions that aham bhakta paradhino. So Krishna says that I am under the control of my devotee. He asvatantra iva dvija. So I am not independent. So even though Krishna is the controller of the whole Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, so Bhoktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shantim Rachati. Krishna is the proprietor of the whole everything, the spirit, material planets, spiritual planets, everything. Yet he says that he asvatantra iva dvija, that I am not independent. He comes under the control of the loving devotional service of his devotee. We see in all his wonderful leelas with Krishna's pastimes how that love for the Lord controls the Lord. He cannot be ye prayasa ajita jitopi asita is-tri-lokyāḥ. So Krishna is Ajita. His another name is Ajita. That means he cannot be conquered by anyone. But he becomes conquered. Ajita jitopi asita is-tri-lokyāḥ. Jnane prayase udapasya namanta eva jivanti sanmukharitam bhavadiyavartham sthane sthita shrutigata tanuvan manobhir ye prayase ajita jitopi asita is-tri-lokyāḥ. This is mentioned in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, where it is said that if one tries to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead through jnana, through the stream of knowledge, jnana marga, Krishna cannot be understood through Jnana Marga. Jnane prayasya udapasya namanta eva. Then how can Krishna be understood? When one is in a humble state of mind. Trinalpi sunichena taroriva sahishnuna. Amanina manadina kirtaniya sadahari. So when one is lower than the blade of the grass, that humility, Trinadapi sunichena taroriva sahishnuna. And the patience and forbearance is like a tree. Because the tree gives everything, and even if something is done to it, it is not objecting to anyone. So taro riva saishuna amanina manadena. So one is not expecting any honor for oneself, but one is giving all the honors to everyone else. Amanina manadena. Then there is kirtaniya sadahari. Then one can engage in glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead constantly. So that is the condition. And when one is in such a state, then this is yogeśvarāṇāṁ gatim āhur antar bahis-tri-lokyāḥ pavanāntar-ātmanām. Na karmabhis tam gatim āpnuvanti vidyā-tapo-yoga-samādhi-bhājām. So the transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body. That is, as such, by the strength of the devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted within and beyond the material worlds. So that is how their movements become unrestricted, because of their loving absorption in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So as it is there is this particular verse where it is said that one is always tushyanti cha ramanti cha. So Machchitta madgat prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. So when the mind is absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is automatically there in the spiritual realm. And that is that unrestricted travel. That unrestricted travel is the total absorption of the mind in the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is unrestricted travel, where one immediately becomes absorbed in that pastime of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the mind is totally absorbed. Machchitta, madgat prana. The life soul, the life air is being used in the service of the Lord. Madgat prana. Bodhayanta parasparam. And the talk that is going on is about Krishna, about Krishna's pastimes. Kathayantascha mam nityam. And what katha is going on? Krishna katha. The talk about the Lord and his wonderful devotees. Kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. And how is that talk going on? With full tushyanti, with full satisfaction and with full blissfulness. So that is, in that state, that travel is unrestricted, because one is actually going in the spiritual world there. One is not restricted to the travel within the material planets. So if someone is using the material body and trying to go to different planetary systems, that is okay. That is being done to satisfy the inquisitiveness, to know the universe. The universe is so huge. The science is still trying to discover the different galaxies, the unlimited galaxies that are present in this universe. So that inquisitiveness is there. But if that inquisitiveness is directed to understand our original constitutional position, athato brahma jignasa. So now is the time to inquire, who am I? So if that inquisitiveness is directed to understand our original nature, then that inquisitiveness will help us to go back home, back to Godhead, which is unrestricted travel within this whole universe. Because when one is the fact that one is remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead is itself the unrestricted travel. The mind, because as we discussed previously, wherever the mind is, there we are. If the mind is absorbed in the lotus feet of Krishna, Savai Mana Krishna Padaro Indeo, then all the senses will automatically get absorbed in the service of the Lord. So that's why Krishna says, Man mana bhav, mad bhakta, madhyaji mam namaskuru, mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosine. So Krishna mentions to Arjuna that give your mind to me, remember me in your mind. Man mana bhava, mad bhakta, become my devotee. Madhyaji mam namaskuru, offer your prayers to me, offer your obeisances to me. Mame vaishyasi satyam te. So Krishna says that surely you will come to me. This is the truth. And why I'm telling this to you, Arjuna? Prati jane priyosine. Because you are so dear to me, Arjuna, I'm telling this to you. There is another, this man mana bhava, this particular verse, is there 2 times in Bhagavad Gita, where the first line is the same. Man mana bhava mad bhakta madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi yuktva ātmanām mat parayana. So in the second verse, the second line, in the other verse, it's saying that mame vaishyasi yuktva ātmanām mat parayana. So when the mind is totally absorbed in me, you will come back to me. Ātmanām mat parayana. So this is the, if you want to take one important conclusion from this verse, we can take this as Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport. By the strength of devotional service, austerities, mystic powers, and transcendental knowledge, everyone can move like Narada Muni or Durvasa Muni. So note the point here, everyone. Srila Prabhupada mentions everyone can move like Narada Muni or Durvasa Muni. So that unrestricted movement. How? By the strength of devotional service. Bhaktya mam abhijanati. Yavanyaschasmi tatvata tato mam tatvato gyatva vishate tadananta. Krishna says that through devotional service, you can know me. So as we said, Yane prayasya udapasya namante eva jivanti sanmukaritam bhavadiyavartam sthane sthita shrutigata tanuvan yoga. So that particular verse is saying that one can remain at the place where one is currently, sthane sthita, but the important condition is shrutigata. One has to keep hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his wonderful devotees, pastimes, and his teachings in Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that Srila Rupa Goswami has written, Nectar of Devotion. So many transcendental scriptures. Nam Namakari Bahudha, just like the names of the Lord are innumerable. There are innumerable scriptures delineating the wonderful pastimes of the Lord and his devotees. And when the mind is absorbed in that, then there is unrestricted travel, which is not dependent on the body traveling from one place to another. The material body is temporary, and the travel of the material body is therefore temporary as well. But when one is absorbed in the loving devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is unrestricted travel that is possible, where one can become absorbed in the wonderful holy names of the Lord. So, Tunde Tandavani Ratim Vitamute Tundavali Labdhaye, Karna Krodha Kadambani Ghatayate, Karnabhrut Devyas Praham, Cheta Prangana Sangini Vijayate Sarvendriyanam Kriti, No Jane Janita Kiyadbhir Amrite Krishneti Varnadvayi. So it is mentioned by Srila Rupa Goswami that he says that when the name of Krishna dances on my tongue and does a Tandava Nritya. Tandava is a Nritya that is done by Lord Shiva. It's the most wonderful dance in the whole universe. So when the names of the Lord, Krishna, 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 is doing the Tandava on my tongue, it feels as if I should have millions of tongues. Karna Kroda Kadambani Ghatete Karnar Buddhebhyas Praham. When the names of Krishna enters my ears, I feel as if I should have millions of ears. Cheta Prangana Sangini Vijayate Sarvendriyanam. When the name of Krishna enters my mind, it captures, it enraptures the whole mind, and all the external sense gratification becomes totally gone. Vijayate Sarvendriyanam Prati. Do jane janita kirbir amritae krishneti varnadvai. I don't know what kind of nectar is there in this syllable Krishna, 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 Krishna. So this is the transcendental way of traveling, unrestricted traveling, by becoming absorbed in Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much for listening. Just see the questions here. Shailesh Tripathi is asking, "आप कहाँ से हैं?" जय जय हो. Shailesh Tripathi ji, originally from Kerala, staying in Athlone in Ireland. Balram Vishwas, UPSC, Jai Shri Ram, Godfather Pachinam, Jai Shri Krishna. Thank you very much. Vancha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyayo cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschate Deshatarine. Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu Krishne Materastu. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.